Well, welcome everybody to our next episode of the Voices Project Dialogue Series. For those who listened into the last episode, it was titled The HPV Conundrum with Prof. Lim, and we had a very interesting going here, going there, talking about various different aspects and things like that. But today, it's actually going to be a whole different geography and a whole different topic. And it's going to be very exciting. I think we're going to be talking about things that matter as it relates to infrastructure and civil service and the overcoming or coming together, one should say, actually, of various communities and different thinkings and opinions to create better living, a community that actually works together and sort of lives together. And we're going to talk about how that then impacts and works in various different aspects, touching upon the string of health that we try and keep on the Voices Project. But let me first welcome to the discussion today. So welcome everybody again. My name is Rohit Sehgal. I do ramble on a lot for those listeners who've been listening to me already or know me. But my name is Rohit Sehgal. I'm the Chief Strategist at the Voices Project, which is an Asia-Pacific focused non-profit based here in Singapore. And I'm joined today by Fahim Ali, the CEO, Khairian Cantonment Board with the government of Pakistan. Fahim and I, it's actually quite interesting. We go back in an interesting academic connection. He was my senior, I should say, at the LKY School of Public Policy. I joined after he had already graduated. And that is therefore a way that we've always found things that are very common and very important to ourselves and to those around us. Fahim is a career civil servant, which is fascinating because I rarely get the opportunity to talk to the civil service in the context of the topics of so many different multilateral dialogues. And he's had more than 10 years working with the government of Pakistan, working on various assignments in different capacities, both local government and, more interestingly enough, even abroad. Now, the reason why I want to talk with Fahim is because I've been following him and listening to what he's been up to. And, you know, he's currently serving as the CEO of the Khairian Cantonment Board, which is a local government. So think about it this way for listeners who don't really quite sometimes understand the connections, that there may be centralized governments and centralized ways that, you know, budgets and priorities, et cetera, are developed, but local governance, you know, at the end of the day, is something that is so vital and necessary because it's about creating local priorities and looking around at your community, your town, your city, and thinking, how am I going to actually work through the various complications to make this a better living standard? Now, Fahim was also the first officer in that way to develop a budget in Pakistan that was participatory. It was solving problems in Khairian by engaging citizens, and we'll hear more about that from him in a bit. And I've found that's quite a unique hallmark of his style. I'm going to enjoy this discussion because he doesn't mince his words. He talks about what it takes to get things done and make sure that people feel that there is a movement forward. So basically, I guess with that, and he's I'm sure blushing at this sort of introduction that I have gone on about, but it's important as we talk in this more audio manner that you can all sort of get the feel of the people and the person across from my virtual table here. Fahim, thank you so much for joining this discussion and talking about your recent experiences.
Thank you so much, Rohit. I must appreciate the kind of introduction you have given, and I would say that I'm a very humble person, but you have tried to project me in a way that I'm finding it very stressful, I must say.
Well, you know, I think in this sort of time that we're living in, where we can't sort of just literally hop on a plane, get on a car, drive somewhere, meet each other, sit over a coffee, podcasts and the way that we can create this dialogue and to introduce folks like, you know, who've not heard of people such as yourself who are doing the things they are, I think it's just so important. So, well, welcome with that.
I'm honored. Thank you so much. I'm really honored.
Thank you so much. And so I think, well, what are we going to talk about today? So we're going to talk about Pakistan's community-driven value creation, not a topic that is being talked about enough. And that's my own curiosity that this pandemic, as we all know it, has mobilized huge amounts of advances in innovations across public and private. And when you look at the diversity of Asia, stakeholders are on various different stages of this journey to try and pursue achievements, personal growth, personal health, overall development and betterment for themselves. And it's interesting because, I think there was a recent APAC health index, which came out by the Economist Group last year, that said that while our region trails in personalized community technologies and strategies, it's so strong in initiatives and infrastructure. And probably no more so than in Pakistan, which is a country that's in a way beaten the odds to showcase what resilience can do in the face of some very hard odds. And that's the curiosity to sit with Fahim and hear and maybe amplify some of these success stories that can drive potential key policies. So while we talk about what Fahim is doing and things that he's getting up to, I think what's important is that we see how a lot of this is actually methodologies and ideas, really, that we could think about transporting to other parts of the Asia and Pacific region. What brings stakeholders together? How do we create community value? How do we create value creation, more importantly, that stems from the public sector? And in a way, we drop these silos, the public and the private side. So the question we're going to ask today, and I'm going to be posing to Fahim, is in the context of Pakistan's effort in community-driven value creation, is what can be done in our diverse region that can help reduce fragmentation, unlock integrated solutions in this, I don't know, what do we call this, post-COVID era, I don't know, next chapter, new normal, and in a way, can this new age public civil service be the catalyst for the change? So with that somewhat extended context, let's dive right into it, man. So the pandemic, has basically, as I was saying earlier, it's got, huge advances. There's innovation, public and private, sort of coming together. We're hearing so much about that. So let's ask you, how has the pandemic and the aftermath redefined, or should I say re-articulated, the role of local governance?
And thank you, Rohit, for setting the context. And before I dwell into this question, I must congratulate you on taking this initiative of the Voice Project and making people hear what some of the underrepresented voices may have to say. So hats off to you for taking this initiative.
Thank you very much.
Well, now, dwelling onto your question, if you see that local governments and especially in the urban areas, they were at the forefront of the COVID-19 crisis. I say so because the data suggests that 95% of all cases recorded in cities were reported in the cities in the first few months. Already urban areas were facing a lot of challenges in terms of poor services, poor infrastructure, poor public transport. The COVID-19 crisis, I believe, amplified that. And that was a huge challenge, especially. And when the restrictions were imposed, there were economic consequences, not only for the individuals, but also for the businesses. And not many businesses thrived in that environment. And we, as at Kharia, we had to give the rebates or tax rebates to the economic businesses, to the businesses who were doing this, all these activities. So, however, when it came to the performance of the local government, we faced a bit of a challenge in reaching out to the community. Luckily, I would say that due to social media, Facebook, WhatsApp, the mediums were already there. We already had a little bit of that presence on these social medias. But then we capitalize it when we capitalize on social media by forming different groups of the communities, by recording video messages, by communicating to them what they are supposed to do, all under the guidance of the federal government and the provincial government. Because the guidelines, nobody knew how to fight this challenge, and the guidelines were coming from the WHO and were communicated to us through the federal as well as the provincial government. So that was one challenge. So basically, the things that we realized that the urban local government has to enhance its capacity to absorb such shocks because they were unprecedented. The things that has helped us in past were the fight that we had in controlling the dengue and the polio eradication program.
Right.
So
Pakistan's been very, I think, worked very hard for those eradication programs. And so that, in a way, fortified, I guess, the
yeah,
experience. That's fascinating. That's
so
fascinating.
the infrastructure was there. So that makes our job much easier when it came to the rolling down of the vaccination program, actually. So I might touch upon that later. So local governments not only had to improve their capacities, but also had to improve their reach to the communities. And this was done by very rapidly digitizing our services. We developed an app called CB Care. It was already in a somewhat formative shape, but not that mature. So we matured it so people can register their complaints, people can file their applications through that CB Care applications, and anyone can download it on their smartphones. So that's one. The second thing that we developed was a complete e-procurement system. Because the works and services, most of them are outsourced to the private sector. But there is a method to awarding that contract under the procurement rules, because we have to uh, openly float the bids, and then people, in return, we have to call the quotations and then the bid, and then we openly have to see which one meets the criteria, and in their presence we have to award the contract so that everything is transparent.
So explain that part of it, because I think for the listeners, I mean, I think this is an important thing that stays mostly behind the scenes for a lot of people. When you suddenly see a new community center being built, a new park being made, a new road being built, all this comes from, I think, as you're describing it, Fahim, a tender process that is done manually. And
Yeah.
then the logistics, meaning that once you've opened it and then declaring it, has to be done in a transparent and public way.
Yeah.
It just sounds extremely hard, but I think it's good for the listeners who might not be aware of all the back work that would go in this more manual process. And what you're saying was able to be sort of lightened a little bit by using the technology factors. Is that correct?
Yeah, sure. So basically, for instance, taking the lead from your example, that if we are supposed to build a community hall, so first we have to design it, and then we have to, do the bill of quantities, etc. So we prepare that document, and then we float that document either to the PEPRA website, or we place it on the notice board as well. And if depending upon the amount, we might have to publicize it in the newspapers as well. So then people bid for that project, they deposit the bid money, and then the projects are evaluated.
Right.
So, but there is a day, normally 15 days time is given from the date of issuance of that notice. After 15 days, roughly speaking, after 15 days, everybody is invited. It's upon them whether they come or not. So a time is fixed. So all the tenders are opened in front of them, in front of the participants, or anybody from the public can also be part of that. So what we do is normally we engage local community members. We take pictures as well as a video, as a record that these people were present. We mark attendance as well, and if depending upon the value of the project, we make a video as well for pictorial evidence to ensure that there is a transparency. Nothing fishy in that. So basically, it's to make people realize that they are transparent. So that's a process we follow. Now, what COVID-19 did. COVID-19, unfortunately, due to restrictions, people couldn't come to the office because we didn't allow that. 50% 50% of the staff was working from home, 50% was in the office. So there was a need actually then how this procurement process has to be developed so that it can be done online. And hats off to the team, I must say, hats off to the team, the IT team, that not only invented it, but very quickly, within 2-3 months, they rolled out this program.
Wow.
And now how does it work? So basically, we float the tender on a PEPRA website, on our website, as well as on the Facebook. and we display it on our notice board, so everybody knows. That's the government process. So everybody knows that yes, there is a tender, and if anybody is interested, have that capabilities, then they can basically be part of this tender process. So now they feed all their data. If they meet the eligibility criteria, then the system automatically generates a comparative statement.
Wow.
Okay, he bids, A bid this, B bid this, C bid this. This was the cost, work experience, all things taken into consideration. And then a comparative statement comes. So everybody know. So now the control delivers that, for instance, my staff or myself or government offices used to have that lever is no more there. So it's all transparent now. Automatically, the system generates that comparative statement, and then the regular process follows. We put that before the board after due diligence, and then board finally gets that approval. So that's how the local government actually had to re-engineer its processes, digitize itself by adopting such technological measures. And this is not the end actually. A lot of local governments were facing the digital connectivity issues.
Right.
For that,
bandwidth, and literally just the ability to have bandwidth, reach, and ability. Wow. Okay.
True.
Right.
So for that, we roped in the largest telecommunication operator in Pakistan, and some of the other companies as well. We said, okay, we provide you favorable incentives. We'll incentivize your investment in, let's say, Khariyan.
Right.
So now 60%, as of today, 60% of Khariyan Cantonment Board is fully digitalized on fiber optics. Not on
optics. Oh my goodness.
Fiber optics.
Right.
So, and this is the first local government, first cantonment board, I must say, first cantonment board to have done that. And I shared one picture on the LinkedIn in which we show the connection, the fiber optics connection has reached at the door in the posh area, as well as in the slum area.
Yeah.
So the infrastructure is making its reach. Now it's up to the people if they wish to use it or not.
So you've created, so it's interesting because what you just described is moving from a somewhat manual, analog, less transparent kind of a hard way to put things together. You've moved it into a more technology-driven, transparent medium, but you've also then realized that, hang on, in order for this to cascade where it has to go, you need bandwidth. So then you brought private public to sort of say, okay, let's make this happen. And then you're not just stopped there. You thought, okay, we've got to make this an equitable access. So then you sort of brought equity into this and saying, so isn't it interesting that, and this is why these conversations are so important, is that the pandemic has no doubt created a lot of havoc and it's created a lot of hardship, but what it's created is innovation, right? I mean, you just discussed three interesting innovations, and I'm sure it doesn't just stop there. It's going to now become ongoing.
Exactly. The other day, in fact, yesterday, I was talking to some of the companies who train people to earn money on e-commerce platforms. So we are collaborating with them that, yes, now we have the fiber optics, we have the broadband services, and we'll give you place. You come here, we won't charge you anything for a year or two. You come, invest here, train the local youth. And enable them to become a freelancers or to enhance their capacity to for a global labor market, so they can tap into the global market. So that's this is something that we are going to build on that infrastructure. Now we know that fiber optics is there now. We wish to capture the value that fiber optics has to offer.
I didn't think about that, because the minute you've got access and fast bandwidth and everything else, there's another factor. You moved local community and governance into being plugged directly into the global e-commerce capabilities and opportunities, right? I mean, suddenly someone who's sort of skilled and now, ready to work in some respects can be trained or can access websites or opportunities halfway across the world because of this sheer fact that they're now able to simply have the access as they need it. I mean, is there something in that then, that when you talk about the question of sustainability always factors and comes in, because moving things to a technology driven system is seen, obviously, no doubt, as progressive, and where a lot of developing economies have to now embrace. But at the same time, when you talk about, and I think this is probably an interesting segue to a factor, that sustainability is something which is always a bit of a double-edged sword. Either you can create something and it's going to take a lot of effort and time, and it's therefore unsustainable. But then if you try and build, let's say, what the SDG 11 goals, and for the listeners here who are asking now, what is SDG 11? Fahim is a bit of an expert here, so he'll describe that to us. But essentially, it's the idea that you can have inclusive and sustainable cities. And I think what you're reflecting is that if you can create or hand the community and the individuals in your community the ability to have productivity, and other things that don't hold them back, you can also find that that can result in so many other benefits. So how does sustainable policy in that context, and maybe you want to describe SDG 11 much better than I've just loosely described it, but you've taken those principles and you're trying to bring it to Kharia where it can actually start to produce outcomes. And talk a bit about that, I think, because this is where it begins to get interesting.
No, this is indeed, it is very interesting actually. So I believe that SDG 11 is one such goal, that might encapsulate each of the other 16 sustainable goals in it. You talk about hunger, you talk about poverty, you talk about energy, responsible production and consumption. When it comes to SDG 11, it's somehow, I see it that way. Maybe experts may differ from me, but I see it that way, that SDG 11 is one such goal because it's related to the cities, it's related to the communities. How do we make them inclusive? How do we make them functional? How do we make them resilient? So everything, for resilience, you have to see it from the health perspective. You have to see it from the poverty perspective. If those needs are addressed, only then you feel that you'll be resilient. Your water needs, sanitation needs. So this is an over-compensing kind of a goal. That's why I'm fascinated about it. And luckily, by the virtue of my job, I get this opportunity to work on this particular goal. So normally, how do we translate the goals spelled in the SDG 11? We basically try to first envision, then we engage and respond to the needs of the community, and then we collaborate with them. We don't just listen and say, okay, now we have listened to you and we do as we please. That's not the case. We collaborate with them, and then we deliver with the entrepreneurial spirit. That's the hallmark of Kharia Cantonment Board's administration. We don't see ourselves as civil servants. We see ourselves as social entrepreneurs. So we believe that we are here to solve the problems in that fashion. I give you an example, basically. So in Kharia, this sustainable urban development originates by envisioning or by taking an initiative or directly engaging stakeholder in our attempt to nurture sustainable cities and communities. In this way, we basically empower community to spell their needs, and we join hands with them on shaping the policy. Most of the times we try to use the bottom-up approach, and sometimes we use top-down approach. And in case of top-down approach, then we try to sell them the idea behind the policy that we are trying to introduce or the development we are trying to carry out. This helps us in identifying the problem and then engage community in finding the solutions and deliver that on ground. And interestingly, when we roll down the program, we don't only keep the monitoring part on our part. We engage community, we identify the right people and say that now you okay, because most of the services, as I told you, that we try to outsource them, and it's a third party. So the community has the ownership because they are the taxpayers. So they might be more concerned. I'm just giving an example. They might be more concerned than me. So I tell them it's your money, and if you can collaborate with us or if you can give your time, then perhaps it would be a good initiative if you can take a look on the programs or the projects that are being rolled out. So that helps us.
So you're saying you bring in, I guess, obviously the people who are going to be able to achieve or develop that particular program, but your inclusivity aspect is that you're saying to the neighborhood, to the community, to the, I guess, the people at large, that ultimately it's it's yours. So you
Exactly.
want to be a part of this, right?
Yes.
And you're allowing them a seat at the table to be able to at least, have some accountability and other factors as well, which is quite unique. I mean, it's sad to say the fact that a lot of public policies are driven in general, right, from a
Uh,
top-down measure, but you're sort of building this entrepreneurial, I like this word, social enterprise in government concept. That's
yeah.
fascinating.
True. Actually, one of the line that I most of the time use when talking to the community, I say them, I'm an actor on 2 years contract. Normally, normally that's the time that we get to serve in one place of the posting.
Right, right.
So basically, you are the ones who are going to live here. So
Mm.
it should be you who should envision how this Kharian Cantonment Board area should look like, and it should be you who must take the ownership of everything that we do.
That's
Because
right.
my interest might be restricted to 2 years.
Right.
You are going to live long here. So this has helped us shape number of projects, and I would very quickly like to
Yeah.
tell you one prime example of that. Let's talk about the downtown area, let's say. So the downtown area of Kharian Cantonment, it mostly comprised of the central markets. There was family parks, a sports ground, but unfortunately, all of them were in a poor shape. So
Mm.
if the visitor used to visit such places, they used to feel unwelcome. As a result, if the number of consumers or visitors are less, then economic activity would be less. So social cohesions would be less, meaning thereby the infrastructure is not being exploited carefully, or the innovation is not taking place, because for innovation to take place, people have to share ideas like we are sharing with each other. So basically, we took up the task that we need to rejuvenate this downtown, and we imagined it as a dynamic place where social cohesions happen, where there's a buzz around. People must celebrate and interact, play, use this infrastructure that is available to them. So for that, we had to upgrade the infrastructure, and that's where we bridge in the community. Then how do you envision this park? How do you see these sports ground? How do you see these markets? And as per their aspirations, we try to develop them. Let me give an example. In the sports ground, such a beautiful place. Uh, it's covered all around. Its peripherals are covered with the lush green trees. A
Oh,
wonderful, a beautiful place. If I get an opportunity, I'll share a picture with you.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Unfortunately, at that place, there was not even a single jogging track.
Mm.
So people come there. Some might play, and others are no place for sitting there. Likewise, if we talk about the D Park, which is a family park, hardly 3 benches were there in the park. The umbrellas installed for the sitting places to cover the sitting places were in shabby conditions. Rides were in the poor conditions. Only one portion of the park was being used, whereas 70% of the area was underutilized. So by engaging the public, by engaging senior citizens, families, women, uh, we were able to capture their aspirations and needs. And we translated those aspirations and needs with them on paper first, and gradually, because funding is always an issue in developing or rejuvenating the infrastructure. And gradually, over a period of 1.5 year, we were able to improve things step by step, step by step, step by step.
That's amazing.
And
That's
yeah,
amazing.
and the prime thing that we improved the gates as well. We installed open screens to make them, convert them into an open house cinemas, and every other week we show them movies. So that created a snowball effect that yes, something is happening for us.
Mm.
So the vibrancy is there. People started to celebrate. Okay, these and they used to come and and appreciate our team effort. They
Mm.
also used to say that, okay, 20 years back, 30 years back, this is how we used to live. The environment was so beautiful. We were, but unfortunately, with the passage of time, the war on terror and things like that, nobody paid attention to that. Because of that security paradigm mindset, we tried, the things were left unattended, and as a result, this all infrastructure dilapidated. But now things have improved, so we have started to take the ownership. So the impact of this initiative was so powerful that people from the nearby neighborhoods, they started to visit Khania as well. So
Right.
the economic activity
They're going
rose.
to come, they're going to eat, they're going to drink, they're going to spend a bit of money. That's always good for local business.
True.
Yeah, nice.
And then the good thing about all these development was that it was in an inclusive in nature. Needs of all segments of the society were, we at least we tried our best to take care of all their needs and aspirations. So that's how I believe that normally this is something that SDG talks about by developing public spaces. One of the goal in SDG 11 is improving public spaces. So that's how we have shaped our public spaces.
That's brilliant. I mean, I mean, that's such a, I mean, see, we need granular examples like that because look, I mean, I come from a generation and this is an Asia-wide thing, and I'm sure a global thing, but I mean, from the perspective of growing up in Malaysia and then in Singapore, and it had such a charming feel that it didn't matter if you were in an urban environment. There was a community sense, and these movies, I think if there's folks who are let's say anywhere north of 45 age old, they'll realize and remember these large screens that used to be put up against walls, and people would bring their food down, and you'd be sharing someone's meal from here, sharing someone's meal from there, and your friends would sit down doing your homework while you're watching the latest for some reason cowboy movies. I'm not sure why, but the bringing back that sense that a community can begin to have not just accountability, see the progress, be more inclusive. It has so many other functions as well. I mean, part of the questions are always, can we see infrastructure? And infrastructure can also have its relationships back into health in a very clear way, because if you have strong infrastructures, you're going to have a healthier living standards, you're going to have better access to healthcare, and so on. But in the general sense, as you've started to build civil society around you in Karyan, that do you think infrastructure almost is in relationship to a sense of change and progress? So someone that, you just mentioned said, this used to be how it was, and it hasn't been like that. And now I can see things can change. Is there a way that people begin to get more, I guess, engaged with what's going around them, because infrastructure is the most visible way. So for instance, I mean, we talked about this, I think, when we spoke some time ago, that, this idea that you can also not just be about creating parks and other places, but the physical living, the solid waste management, the sheer, being aware of where disposal and waste, etc., are going. Talk a bit about that, because I think that's an integral part that, again, from running a civil service at local governance level, are the kind of things that people just assume, to use that term, it's someone else's problem. But it's your problem. You've got to figure out everything on how to get waste from point A to point B. You've got to change behaviors. You've got to do so many factors that will create a healthier and a cleaner city where people can enjoy the parks and the movies and so on and so on. So talk a bit about how your work on, I guess, what you started to develop in this area is creating progress, but how is it to look after all of that really hard stuff? How do you get people to put the garbage where it needs to go? How do you find the place where the garbage needs to go to, and so on and so on?
Thank you very much, Rohit. This was very challenging, in fact. Solid waste management, and it's challenging actually not only in Pakistan, but I guess throughout the developing world. I was reading a blog the other day from the World Bank, and it says that 90% of the developing countries have this issue of unregulated or illegal dumping and open waste. And Pakistan is no different, because only 40%, I guess 40% of the Pakistanis, they lack access to basic sanitation facilities. So in Kharia, when it comes to the posh area, things were much better. Much better in a sense. Yes, there was an issue of open dumping waste. There was an issue of unregulated waste disposal. But at least there was some infrastructure available. Some bins were available. There were only three vehicles that were looking after the core of the Khari Cantonment Board. But unfortunately, there was a larger chunk of places which is around the peripheries, and we didn't have any sort of service there. So the service was inequitable. And roughly we generate around 54 tons of waste on daily basis. And with three vehicles, how much how much one could actually lift. So
That's true.
that was quite challenging. And overall, if we speak about the overall solid waste management, effective solid waste management, it consumes around 20 to 50% of the budget of the municipal governments throughout the world.
Wow.
That's the standard. It's such a big challenge, such a big challenge. So in Kharia, however, what we did in Kharia, I'll share the case study of Kharia with you. So in Kharia, to revamp all this issue, we had to carry out a threadbare study of the region, of the challenges, and of the resources. Fortunately, we had the manpower. The manpower was enough to cater the needs of the whole area. But since the services were only focused in a core area, which is very small area, that was giving us a very good picture. It looks as if, wow, sanitation is world class here. But as soon we used to move on in the other areas, things were really difficult. So we figured out that there are around 13 vehicles, sanitation vehicles, which were declared condemned, and the previous regime was preparing for auctioning them so that they may procure 2 to 3 vehicles. It's the right strategy. I don't say anything. Don't see any problem in that. However, by engaging an expert, we re-evaluated the condition of those vehicles, because we spelled out that perhaps we need around 15 to 16 trucks, compactors, rickshaws included, to provide services in the 100% of the area to improve our coverage and expansion. So the expert told us that if you basically the cost benefit analysis was done, that to procure this, you might need, let's say around, I'm giving an example, I don't have the exact number.
Sure.
You might need around 100 million rupees, let's say.
Mm.
Whereas the same work can be done within, if you repair it, the same can be done within 20 million rupees,
Wow.
let's say.
That much of a difference. Yeah, broadly speaking, yeah.
Broadly speaking, it's
Right.
to make our audience understand the difference.
Yes.
So we opted for the second one. And each month we fix, because taking out this much amount of money is not feasible for a local government, because we don't get any grant from the external sources.
That's
So that's a unique for the cantonment boards. Actually, there are other local governments in Pakistan that directly receives the grant from the provincial as well as the federal government. But when it comes to cantonment boards, we generate our own resources. Just a small footnote for the audience.
Right.
So, okay. So we started to repair them, and within a passage of I would say around 8-9 months, we improved. We had a running fleet of around 12 vehicles. And another challenge that we faced in the peripheries, which are roughly, I would say, informal settlements and urban slums or villages, their streets are very narrow, as you might have seen in India as well. The streets are very narrow. So accessing those places was challenging. So we procured rickshaws, or we call that chan gadi or rickshaws, things like that. So and we
tuk-tuks or three-wheeler auto rickshaws for our daughter rocking here. Yeah, we've all seen them. We've all grown up with those. Yep.
Yeah. So we procured 3 of them, and we engaged the community of those areas that since this is a private land, not a government land, and we do not have any transfer station here. So what we can do is we can collect the rubbish from the source. So only that strategy would work here. Otherwise, you will keep on dumping in someone else's open plot. Right. So that's again an illegal activity.
Right.
So the community was taken on board, and everybody appreciated the initiative. And since long, I guess for the past 6 months, we are collecting waste from the doorstep of the villages, informal settlements. I would say that is unprecedented. I have not seen this anywhere, at least during my course of service. I've seen this being done in the posh areas, but not in informal settlements. So, and it helps create some waves as well, because the posh area started to put pressure on us that, no, give us this service as well. You should collect it from the from the door-to-door collection, and we are running a successful pilot, I would say, because we did it 3 months, started it 2 to 3 months back, and the area has become very clean. So because people used to dump in the open pits or open garbage or open compactor bins, so now in that community, areas look very fine. They look very clean.
So I'm
So
asking a question. I mean, so I just, as you're describing this, because an issue even here in Singapore has always been that you can, create the infrastructure, you can build the necessary feeders and all of that, but ultimately it's down to that behavior. And I know you were telling me about this some time ago when we'd spoken about this, that how do you actually get the physical behavior to change where somebody says, I'm going to dispose of it where I'm meant to. I'm going to be more conscious of the way that I'm, supporting this infrastructure, etc. There's, I think there was a little bit there that you talked about how you then started to see, with the local community, if that was something that could help bridge any gaps in that area.
oh, yes, indeed. Actually, normally our point of contact with the community are male members. That used to happen. And we used to engage them and tell them and brief them. And we even carried out some walks as well, awareness campaigns, awareness walks as well, by engaging the people from the markets, from the residential areas. We walk in the street. And we even campaigned on the cycles as well by taking kids on board, that this is how this is being done to save the environment. We have to follow these protocols. Unfortunately, there was some improvement, but not to the extent we had anticipated or we would have loved to see. So we started engaging the women in Kharia. Unprecedented. For the first time, they came out from their houses to come and sit in a government office, in a government lawn. In fact, we did it outside. And we heard their voices and concerns. Wow. And they appreciated the initiatives that were taken by the internal board. And then we started in a very requesting mode. We tell them this is the challenge that we demanded from your male counterparts, that the garbage should be disposed of in a biodegradable bags, right? And should be, if you do not, if the door-to-door collection is not provided at your doorstep, as is the case in some of the housing colonies here, so put them in the garbage pits. Normally what happen is, people normally they work there and they have helpers at their home. They come, this is their claim actually. They say they come and then they will come all the way from the house. Let's say they might traverse 50 meters from the house to reach the garbage pits, but they are unwilling to take that extra 5-meter distance and would throw it from that place and see if they can if they can put it in the garbage pit or not. If it goes, it finds, they celebrate, and if it doesn't, they're least bothered. They would say that only local government is there, they will take care of it.
That's right.
So to change this behavior, we spelled out this challenge in front of the women folks of the community, and to our surprise, 80% of the community is now using biodegradable bags. Most of them, I unfortunately have not quantified that, but most of the garbage pits, people have started to put the rubbish or the biodegradable bags in that garbage pits.
Brilliant.
So as I feel, because they are the gateways, they have a more impact, they have more control, and they were the missing link in our effort to revolutionize or improve the solid waste management operation.
That's so true, because so much of policy that way. I mean, you've built infrastructure. You said at the beginning, you started to sort of progress the community otherwise from a more manual system to a more digitized and technology driven one. You started to build a community feel that wasn't reliant entirely on central or federal sort of grants, etc. So you found a way to build public-private systems. One of the things that's been said in terms of creating livable cities and healthy cities is you need brave policy, right? And I guess there's always this question around local governance and how infrastructure, as we've just talked about, makes a big difference. And I'm going to switch a little bit here to talk about health. And I'm not sort of reflecting you in any which way as the expert when it comes to health, but then certainly around the areas that you've been sort of looking at and developing. How do we carry some of these policy priorities, the infrastructure that you're building, the livable standards that you're now striving for, and some of the real hard things that, where rubbish is thrown, where people are, looking at, being a bit more sanitized in their approaches and all of that, the livable standards. How do you bring stakeholders that can come together and that this level of innovation, be it in the healthcare sector, be it in infrastructures or other places, how do you build that value creation, which you've already started to describe? And is there a way that perhaps what this region is actually facing is a big issue, is that can we look at ways that a lot of infrastructure policies can also be brought into where healthcare right now, service providers, the necessary awareness, the so the early diagnosis, those sort of things, if they are also brought in, do they feature as part of a master plan, for instance, I guess is my question.
Oh, another interesting question, Rohit. And since you have touched upon the word master plan, so I do believe that the answer to this question actually lies in a master plan, because the levers for to control personalized healthcare or improve the overall health of the community, those levers are already available with the local government. For instance, parks, for instance, sports ground, sports activities, eco-friendly buildings. These are some of the levers that are used for the master planning. I'll give you an example from the other part of the world. You might have heard about the Baton Rouge. It's a health district in Louisiana state in US. They were facing a problem of unhealthy, people were unhealthy because of their poor food choices. They lacked green spaces and alternatives to driving. So chronic illnesses were prevalent there, for instance, obesity and diabetes. So what the government did was they envisioned a master plan by engaging health experts.
Right.
Unprecedented. I've never done a master planning because this is my 6th local government that I'm serving in. We have never done master planning by engaging the health.
Fascinating.
See, so basically what they proposed that, okay, the medical community took up the onus on them and see it as a health challenge, the master planning from the health perspective. And the other day, because we are doing a master planning of Khariyan as well, and I gave this example that this is how we can control the health of the community by making these places active, by making users actively use such places. So anyway, coming back to the Baton Rouge example. So they developed the pedestrian areas. They ensured that the alternate routes are available for the cycling, for the walking, and they improved their public spaces as we have done in Khariyan. So likewise, as a result, they were able to transform that community, once which was falling very low on the health rankings of the US. Now it's one of the top 10 community there, local government there.
That's very fascinating because I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go on.
No, please.
I was just echoing because it's fascinating to hear you give that perspective, because you're touching upon a very critical factor, and that is the social determinants of health, such as the livability, the walkability. It's always the idea that can we have more prevention than cure, right? I mean, if we can have a equitable access to health, things that allow for people just to have an improved standard of living, you might be able to reduce the impact of dietary, poor dietary intakes or other aspects, and calorific rich nutrient things like that, which are in the periphery, but then you're suddenly bringing how to say, like a better way that people can be just managing their own health in a way. Sorry, but please do go on, because I was just getting quite excited by what you were saying there.
No, I'm really happy to see that, because that excitement translates into my energy, translates my energy as well. So now the same levers are being used in Khariyan as well. If I give you an example of the Pakistan, the data suggests that 40% of the diseases in Pakistan, the burden of disease in Pakistan, is due to lifestyle, right? And 38%, around 38 to 40% is because of the poor sanitation facilities or infectious diseases. So
Right.
that's where solid waste management, that's where, having active public spaces, having a decent landfill site. Unfortunately, I couldn't touch upon that. So that's another topic that helped us improve the health of the people or the neighborhoods living in the near vicinity of the landfill site, because there was a waste openly dumped for the past many years. I would say roughly around 30 to 35 years, and the only way to reduce the volume of that place was to put it on fire, and that would create all kind of respiratory illnesses, because there used to be a blanket. People used to tell me, because I've experienced it twice when I came here, and the community tells that it used to be a blanket of clouds of the smoke, and those who could afford, they would move out of Kharia and to spend their 3 to 4 days somewhere else so that it settles down. So we cleared that by carrying out trenches, by separating the recyclable waste and put them into trenches, and by planting orchard on them. So, and now it's serving as a community, and we also planted vegetables there. So now it's kind of a serving as a community garden for the community.
Wait, you have to stop there. This is amazing. So so okay, no, you got to spend a few minutes on this one, because I think the idea is that you're reducing from a pollution standards, from infrastructure standards, but it's not just about landfills and refills, but you're utilizing that area for organic vegetables and fruit and all that. I mean, you've got to talk a bit about this. I think this is actually pretty fascinating.
Sure. Actually, the landfill site, as per our master plan, the size of the landfill site was around 10 acres. Unfortunately, the size, because of the unregulated dumping, the size expanded to around 30 to 35 acres. So
Wow.
that's a lot. That's 3 times, roughly speaking, 3 times more than the specified area. And the waste, this local government was formed in 1959. Since then, that place is being used as a dumping site. So unfortunately, there used to be piles of garbage there. And I got the opportunity to go and see it, because we used to receive a lot of complaints, not only in written on the apps that we developed, but people used to come in bulk and complain about that, because there were people living there, and there were smell issues, there were visual nuisance as well. And the doctors, I carried out a meeting with some of the doctors who work with the community there, and they were of the view that the number of respiratory illnesses, the prime source, in their opinion, was that landfill site.
Oh, wow.
Probably. So we see it as not only as an environmental challenge, but also a health challenge. And it took us a while, because number of efforts were made in previous regime, but unfortunately, none of them was successful, or they were not able to achieve the outcomes of their policy interventions. So I would say we were lucky. We formed a team. We brought in the right stakeholders and experts, and we try to figure out that how we can develop. And that's where the Singapore experience has really helped me out. Initially, we made a plan as per the plan of Singapore, but then the cost would run in billions, not in millions, I would say billions of rupees. So we had to drop that idea, and we had to find a local solution for a local problem. So by engaging community, by giving them the ownership, we figured out that perhaps by excavating deep trenches, we can put this waste into the trenches. Because if I share the profile of the waste, most of it, because it's a very green area, that was leaves or branches, and some recyclable waste in form of aluminum, plastic, etc. And thirdly, the household waste. So we categorized this waste, developed a plan that, okay, the organic waste would not reach the dumping site. Each of the household, or the large areas of the community as a whole, would develop composting sites, and we help them develop those composting pits, so that we may create a urea for and use it later. And for the trees and branches, we segregated it and put it in a separate place. That okay, this is a wood stall. Now this is a wood store, and you, if there is a branches issue or leaves issue, we can put it there. And then because leaves it decomposes very quickly, so that's not an issue because the volume is more, but the weight is less.
Right.
And then the final category was the second category was of the recyclable waste. We encouraged our workers that okay, if you collect it, then you can dispose it off. We don't need anything. So now, in a way, we have helped them out that they sell it, and that is an additional income on them.
Right.
Okay. So what's the benefit for us? That it has reduced the size of it has reduced the volume of the waste. So by categorizing waste into different categories, then the landfill site, we realized that perhaps we don't even need a 10 acres landfill site, because now the reducible waste, hardly 20% of the total waste is the waste which should actually go into the landfill. So that's how we have been able to increase the life of the landfill site. And by separating all the wood, the recyclable waste and the leaves, etc., and by dumping them, we have started to plant, different orchards on it and vegetables. The land which is
what are you growing? What's the favorite? What's the thing that's most when you talk about orchards and things like that? What sort of vegetables and fruit are you finding?
Apple. And people used to say that it's very hard for apple to grow here, but we have seen that it has grown here. Guava is very much popular here. Mango trees, they have survived here. Yes, lychee we are doing good with lychee as well. And when it comes to vegetables, the day-to-day vegetables that we use at our house, onion, tomatoes, ladyfinger, depending upon the weather. So these kind of vegetables, and anybody can use.
So yeah, I was in Vancouver recently, and I saw something that I haven't seen in a long time, and I find that I think even in Johannesburg they have these areas wherever you have unutilized land, and the government sort of says, okay, we're gonna make sure that the soil and everything is done. And then you come, or people can take little tiny plots and have their own little vegetable or orchard or something like that. And some of these plots are literally the size of a small, like even a carpet, a large carpet area. Like literally, it's that small. And what's nice is that people come there and it's their little patch and they're growing their little thing, and and it's all done on a very honest system. I mean, a lot of it actually, I don't think they actually take home to consume, but then they pass on for charities or whatever. But it brings neighborhoods together because there's this one unused plot of land. But no, this sort of reminded me of kind of something like that where it can go, which is really, really nice.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you for giving that example, and I would look into this.
These things go. I mean, so look, I mean, I think one area that we've sort of been wanting to talk about, because this is where I think when I first talked with you, Fahim, I was really curious to ask is, and let me give the sort of the context for our listeners. Now, there's this idea behind universal healthcare, which I think Asia as a whole has been really contending and struggling with, because on one side, there's a lot of essential diseases that are quite expensive and hard for governments to afford entirely. But then on the other side, you have let's say insurers and payers who then have to figure out how to manage those costs. And so therefore, UHC or universal healthcare, and it's a WHO prerogative, is to try and put back. Not just that UHC is something which gives free healthcare, that's not what anybody wants, but you're talking about equitable reach. So for example, getting more disease awareness and screening for women for avoidable types of cancers, having the right sort of ways that potential, pre-diabetic or those who might have metabolic syndromes might be able to live with their disease in more compliance ways. So the idea of UHC stretching beyond just the concept of what, free healthcare and etc., but actually becoming preventative, training, resource aspects as well. Now, I was really curious to ask you about, and forgive me if I say this wrong, but Sehat Sahulat Pakistan. Now, that is something that's been getting a lot of attention because in a way, as I've understood it, is that it brings the idea of universal healthcare. It brings multi-sectorial and private sector strategies together. And I think it's something which more people need to just basically know about. I want to know more about that. So in that context, do you want to talk a bit about this particular initiative?
Yeah, sure. Well, Sehat Sahulat program is a flagship program of this government. And it is believed that this is a milestone towards social welfare reforms, because what it has done is it has ensured that they identified underprivileged citizens across the country get access to their entitled medical health in a swift and a very dignified manner. So, and interestingly, without any financial obligation. So the idea behind it is that in Pakistan, at least 60 to 70% of the payments are done in the healthcare sector are done out of the pockets. So which has a very severe impact, which severely impacts the overall financial capacity, financials of the low household, low people who are, let me rephrase it. So it severely impacts the poor. And the government is striving hard to lift everyone out of the poverty. And unfortunately, COVID-19 has pushed more people below the poverty line. Before COVID, we were roughly 30% of the Pakistanis were living under the poverty line, and now the numbers must have increased. So this government, the current government, when they formed a government in one of the provinces in Pakistan, they came up with this idea of universal health coverage in that province, which is KPK. So after assuming the power in the federal government, the government introduced this program and have very swiftly rolled it down in at least 68 districts of different provinces. So currently, the latest data suggests that around 27.6 million families in Pakistan has enrolled in this program. And there are around 3.3 million, 3.2 million hospital visits that have been carried out under this program. And let me brief you a bit about this program. So this program works in a way that basically the government has given, has allocated 1 million rupees per family to cater their needs of a secondary and a tertiary healthcare. So if there are complexities in diabetes, or if there is a renal failure, cardiovascular diseases, things like that, which are treated, these diseases have to be treated indoor. So for indoor, this Sehat Sahulat program is basically a program that covers that. And I got an opportunity to speak one of the local resident in Kharia. So he was giving me an example that he was suffering from some kind of, sorry, I'm not a medical person, so
no, that's fine.
Yeah, with my explanation. So he was suffering from some sort of cancer on his, chin and under the ear. So he visited a primary healthcare unit and was referred to the secondary care and tertiary care, and they carried out his tests and they realized that perhaps they do not have the right kind of infrastructure or the experts to deal with it, and they referred him to the metropolitan area, which is Lahore. So they referred it to the Lahore, which is the capital of the Punjab province. Right. So when their tests were carried out, and finally he was operated upon, and then he was relieved from the hospital. Nice. The interesting thing is that he was not asked even a single penny throughout this this journey, starting from Kharia,
really
coming back to Kharia. Yes, because he said that everything was covered under that program. So the doctors took care of it, because it works very simply. That they'll get your CNIC number. It is sent on a specific number, that is 8500. And if you're eligible, then you'll get the response. So Sehat Sahulat program teams, they are stationed at different hospitals, both in private and public. The beauty of this system is that it's not only covering the public hospital, it's covering the private hospitals as well. So you can get the treatment from there as well.
Wow. So you can cross transfer from public and private under this national program.
That's the beauty of this program. So it's kind of have integrated the existing infrastructure. Earlier, private sector was operating on its own,
Exactly.
public was operating on its own. Now, if let's say if Fahim knows that where is the best facility available for this, I just need to be referred to that place, and if I meet the criteria, then I'll be treated upon, and nobody will charge me a penny. At
Amazing.
least 1 million rupees per year. So for 1 year, it's 1 million rupees.
Wow.
So that's a very powerful program, and it has relieved so many people. So and independent, I was reading on the website that independent survey was conducted, and 97% people were satisfied with the
That's
services.
amazing. You know, I mean, see, this is why, and again, I turn to the listeners to sort of understand and appreciate what Fahim just described here, because the idea that our region and our cities can continue to afford illnesses that can, you know, cost and the burden and the abilities, at least there are, you know, things like the initiative that Fahim just explained, Sehat Sahulat Pakistan, means what he just said is that from private to public and back again, you can sort of crisscross, right? But end of the day, there has to come a time where some of the infrastructures and some of the initiatives that local governance is doing, and I think Fahim, as you've sort of given these very interesting perspectives, that there has to be, as hard a word as it is to say, a preventative goal that will avoid the slippery slope that it will ultimately become cost or burden at some point. And you know, we can look at the NHS and we can look at other places that are still doing such tremendous work and yet coming under, you know, that sort of pressure. And you find even in here in Singapore that there is now a marked shift to sort of say, let's get back control of, let's say, our diseases. Let's avoid, you know, situations that's going to take us down that path where, as great as programs as Sehat Sahulat Pakistan are, it doesn't mean that we can all live as unhealthy as possible or ignore the situations or forget about the screening, but go for that, give access there. So this is change of balance, which ultimately is going to make these sort of more scalable and affordable and continue. Now, this is why a conversation like this, Fahim, has to probably become a multi-episode discussion, because we need to bring in more voices and talk about this, and that's something that, you know, we are going to be doing with you on back on this show. But let me ask you, in a, I guess, as a summary way, that as we sort of pull this all together, we are seeing that, you know, you're taking things one step at a time. You're looking at things in a multi-sectoral perspective. Clearly, one can't boil the ocean, as they say, and try and do everything all together. But if I could ask you for your words of wisdom to leave us with, in your impression, what's the fundamental role at the end of the day of public and private sectors to enable this sort of integrated function? And has the post-pandemic times changed that? What's your take on public-private sectors now compared to, I don't know, 2.5, 3 years ago? Has it changed?
Well, definitely, there is a marked change when it comes to the services provided by both the public as well as the private sector, and I believe both of them have tried their best to improve their capacities and reach to serve the public. Uh, Private sector, as we all know, that it's more kind of a profit driven. So they do not try to invest in the areas of the public goods, for instance, by building roads or by providing parks and public spaces, because that's where they may not get that they may not get the best return on their investments. So such things should be taken care of by the government, whereas the government must provide a level playing field and enabling environment for the private sector, and let the best team and let the best in the town come and create that value, and then government should try to capitalize on that value and build that ecosystem. So I would say that both the public and the private sector, they have to work hands in glove. But the prime role of the government should be regulatory, on the regulatory side, and only intervene when the market fails. Otherwise, the market should be given a free hand to come and create that innovation and
Yeah. So sort of having reducing, I guess, reducing this sort of fragmentation, but at the same time helping to bring, if one can say, integrated policy delivery, right? So, I mean, it takes two hands to clap. And therefore, a lot of these things get built when you look at the roles of private and public. That's very well put. And I think as we begin to understand, as this dust settles into this next sort of chapter that we're all going to be living in, it'll be very interesting to track and see. Look, well, Fahim, thank you so much for the time. I know your schedule is chock-a-block and you've got so much going on. I'm looking forward at some point to seeing videos and photos of the lovely mangoes and lychees and ladyfingers that are growing in the places that you've now built and developed. And what we'll be doing as we sort of post this podcast on our social media, Fahim, is I think some lovely photos of the city of Kairan, which I think everyone would love to see and visualize the way that some of this is now looking. So thank you so much for that, for your time with us today. I'd like to obviously thank the Voices Project Asia for enabling this initiative and helping to bring some of these stories and learnings to life. Well, look, stay tuned for our next episodes. We're now on a bit of a roll. We've got such diverse conversations and such interesting people who are doing such amazing work that we can all learn from. And you can find all of these up on our Spotify channel. You can also get them on the rss.com as well. Or you can sort of venture over to our website at www.thevoicesprojectasia.org. So thank you so much for listening. And I guess just as I always say, just remember this, that we can make a change happen. It's just really just one step at a time. Thank you so much all for listening. Bye-bye.